Hello, I'm Donald Leggett and welcome to this edition of Share Views, brought to you by the financial website London South East. Our guest today is Adrian Pocock, CEO of InfraStrata, the AIM-quoted gas storage company based in County Antrim, Northern Ireland. Welcome, Adrian.
Good to see you again, Donald.
Yes, it's very good to have you back. Now, let me kick off by asking you about energy storage and gas storage in particular. Why is that such a big issue for the UK?
Well, as you may know, Donald, we in the UK as a whole have some of the lowest gas storage percentage in terms of our usage in Europe, and there is none at all in Northern Ireland, or indeed the whole of the island of Ireland. And so it's becoming increasingly important, increasing demand for gas within the Northern Ireland and Ireland networks, increasing demand from power stations which will be gas-fired rather than oil or coal. So it's a growing market, and once we leave the EU, we won't be able to rely on imports through the pipelines from Holland or whatever so much. We won't have an absolute right to call on gas at peak times. So it's really essential that we increase the amount of storage available in the UK. Furthermore, the closure of Rough, the old gas well in the North Sea, which is currently 80% of the storage, that's going to mean there's even more fluctuation in prices at peak times, and therefore our facility becomes all the more desirable because the gas traders can make potentially more profit.
So the UK doesn't have sufficient gas storage facilities, and the UK is much more reliant on piped gas from continental Europe and beyond.
Indeed, and indeed the amount of home supplied gas, i.e. from the North Sea, that continues to decline. There's no real prospect of fracking being done simply. I have to emphasise, we have nothing to do with fracking. It's a potential source of gas within the UK, but we believe, and our potential customers believe, that the demand for storage and the ability to make money out of it is increasing.
So what does your Island McGee gas storage project add to the UK's storage capability?
It will be 500 million cubic metres of gas storage, which will be approximately 25% of the total. We're doing it on a phased development basis, and it's 8 caverns, 8 large salt caverns, and the first phase is 2, and we'll then roll it out on a progressive basis after that.
So without putting too fine a point in it, you're quite a big deal.
Well, we would like to think we're important. The UK government thinks we're relatively important because we're the only project that's getting UK government backing, and the only project that's also getting EU backing because we're important to the Republic of Ireland as well.
And how has the project moved forward since we spoke last? I see you've appointed a Chief Operating Officer and a CFO. Tell us more about those appointments.
Well, we had no engineering expertise on the board internally. Now we have John Wood, who's been appointed to the board as Chief Operating Officer. He's got extensive oil and gas experience, and he is running the FEED programme from our side of things. The FEED contractors are Costain, who have huge experience, and Deep, which is a German-based company, which is probably the most experienced in Europe. We also have consultants in the form of Evan Passaris, who's one of the most experienced salt cavern men in the world, and we've got WSP. We've got input from other major engineering people on behalf of potential investors. So it's leapt on leaps and bounds. What's more, we are ahead of programme and under budget, so we're confident that the FEED will be finished, the front-end engineering design will be finished by the EU deadline of the 20th of December, and it's moving ahead better than we could have hoped for.
And your 2 new key people, they're already in place, they're already working at the desks?
And I'd like to also mention Andy Duncan, who's our new finance man, our new Chief Financial Officer. He's got extensive experience of bank funding and institutional funding. He's worked for oil companies. He's an engineer by background, which is somewhat unusual for a finance man, but Andy really has brought a huge amount of contacts and experience to us as well.
So the last time we spoke, you were just announcing Costains. We're doing the design infrastructure.
Sure.
Has that started? Are Costains
Oh, yes.
well underway with that?
Well, of the 15 key milestones, we, as I say, are ahead of programme. We're ahead of programme. We've hit the first 7 key milestones. So we're really positive about how well it's going. And long may it continue.
News flow to be expected in 2018. Is it all going to be related to feed, the design of the infrastructure, or are there other bits and pieces you will be advancing in 2018 and beyond? In other words, what's going to kick the share price?
As I alluded to in our last interview, Donald, that we were in detailed discussions with a number of parties. We still are. Those are progressing well. But when you're looking at negotiating long-term contracts with major institutional investors and major gas companies, you don't get those over the line overnight because there's a lot of proving to be done. And as the FEED has progressed, we've ticked all the boxes, and indeed people are well. It's all green lights at the moment. So I'm hoping that we will be making some very positive announcements when we can. I don't want to exceed people's expectations or aspirations. Yes. I would rather.
But you clearly can't tell me anything more today.
Well, sadly not.
Then I shan't ask you.
That's very good of you. Thanks.
Okay. You've been an AIM-listed company since 2008, in fact. But it really the project is coalescing in front of our eyes, and it has momentum. How would you describe the investment case for InfraStrata as it stands today?
A year ago, the current board took over on the 27th of June last year, so it's almost a year to the day that we took control. At that point, when we got in control, we found there was very little money and very little prospect of the project happening. Now we are well funded. We have the project underway. We're motoring. We're the only project of its type that has EU approval, EU assistance and grant funding, and also UK guarantee scheme from the UK government. There are similar projects to ours, but we have a real advantage over them in that 2 points. A, we've got government backing, and B, we've got a geographical location in Ireland where there is no storage. So the potential income streams from blue chip operators who want to take space in our caverns is far better than any other.
So you've got UK guarantee funding, you've got match funding from the EU.
Yes.
So what fills in the gaps? Did you do a share placing, or how did you raise your money?
We did a placing earlier in the year at 0.24 pence, and that raised 925,000. And the share price has just about doubled. We've been north of 0.5 in the last week or so. So the share price is moving ahead in the right direction. We've also got some warrant monies beginning to come in at 0.48 pence. So, funding has been very good, and the growth potential, once we get long-term income streams signed up and announced, we believe that's really going to add to the mix. The other point is that the investment of equity, bearing in mind that the first phase of this project is in the order of 120 million, and the total project value is 300 million, and we're a 4.5 million market cap company, you'll appreciate that we are putting in the investment from outside and the banks at the project level and not diluting the main company InfraStrata. So on that basis, we believe that we've got real potential for share growth. I can't predict where the share price is going to go, but once we have good, solid blue chip income streams, it will look a lot better.
So where does your funding take you up to? And will you need new funding when it comes to building the caverns, the gas, the gas plant, and so on? Where does that money come from?
Well, of course, we'll need funding for that, Donald, because 100 million, 65% will come from the UK Guarantee Scheme lending scheme.
So that's already in place.
We've been pre-approved for it. You obviously have to go through the process of applying to government and the banks for that. But 65% of the capital cost will be at a sort of effectively a beneficial lending rate. It's government backed. The principal sum and all of the interest is guaranteed by the government. So that gives you a much better, much smaller lending margin from the banks because they know it's secure lending. And the remainder of the funding will be institutional at the project level, and they will be therefore getting an agreed rental stream for our blue chip customers.
Great. So you 100% own the Island McGee project, which is what we've been talking about. So what investment potential does InfraStrata have, and why is that not yet reflected in the share price? There you go. That's your final pop at saying why you're a good investment.
I think it takes a while. The company had been in the doldrums. We are delighted by the level of funding that we've had from existing shareholders, new shareholders. The message is getting across that the project is happening at long last.
The project's gaining momentum, clearly.
Absolutely, and it had been in the doldrums, and historically it had got and
now it seems to have wind in its sails.
Well, I would like to think so. We've got a really, really strong team, both internally and externally, with massive experience in similar projects. We are doing extremely well in our negotiations with major potential tenants, for want of a better description. So we believe that we've got tremendous capability of the share price growing, and
it would be nice to see you when it's time to actually talk about the secret things that you can't tell me at the moment. So will you come back and see us, Adrian?
I will, of course, Donald, and I look forward to it.
Fantastic.
With some really good news.
We have an audience for your news, I think.
Well, I think everybody likes share prices to move ahead strongly, and that's what we want to do.
I couldn't disagree with that, Adrian. Adrian Pocock, CEO of InfraStrata, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. If you like this interview and you'd like to see others like this, do subscribe on London South East's YouTube channel, and we'd be delighted to entertain you further. Thank you very much for watching.